The Galactic Confederation had existed for nearly 8,000 years before humans stumbled onto the interstellar scene. Most species had thousands of years of spacefaring experience before being invited to join. Humans? We got in on a technicality after only 2 centuries of primitive rocket technology. Something about our unique perspective and diplomatic potential. Translation. We amused the elder races. The Confederation's Grand Assembly Hall orbited the neutral world of Nexus Prime, an architectural marvel that resembled what would happen if you gave a cosmic squid unlimited resources and told it to design something impressively intimidating yet functionally bureaucratic. The hall could seat representatives from all 627 member species, each in their environmentally customized pods. The human section was embarrassingly small. Jack Holloway, Earth's senior diplomatic representative, stared out the viewport of his quarters adjacent to the assembly hall. Distant stars twinkled like they were laughing at him. This was supposed to be a routine trade negotiation between the Terran Alliance and the Draxian Empire. Instead, it had escalated into what the newscasts were calling the diplomatic incident of the century. Ambassador, the Draxian delegation has requested your presence in the neutral chamber, announced Ila, Jack's AI assistant. Her holographic form flickered beside him, displaying the standard-issue diplomatic service uniform that matched his own navy blue suit with silver piping. Jack sighed, straightening his already perfect tie. Any updates on General Kragvosh's mood? The Draxian Warlord has destroyed 3 pieces of Confederation furniture in the last hour. This represents a 15% decrease from yesterday's destruction rate, which our analysts interpret as marginal improvement. Fantastic, Jack muttered. He's down to just mildly homicidal. Jack had only met General Kragvosh once before, during the initial delegation introductions. The Draxian was everything the briefings had described: 8 feet of armored exoskeleton, 4 arms each capable of crushing concrete, mandibles that could snap through metal, and skin the color of radioactive moss. The Draxians were a warrior culture that had, against all evolutionary logic, developed spaceflight before they'd finished having territorial wars on their home planet. Ella, remind me again why Earth thought sending me to negotiate with a species that considers diplomatic compromise a form of weakness was a good idea. Your file indicates you were selected for your unflappable demeanor under pressure and remarkable ability to navigate culturally sensitive scenarios. Ella paused. There is an addendum noting that you were the only senior diplomat who hadn't already refused the assignment. That sounds more accurate, Jack said, checking his appearance one last time. He was average height, with a face his mother had once kindly described as pleasantly forgettable, perfect for a diplomat who needed to blend in. His one distinguishing feature was a small scar above his right eyebrow, souvenir from a first contact situation gone wrong on Europa. The neutral chamber was designed for tense negotiations, featuring architectural elements from all major member species. The end result looked like an interdimensional waiting room designed by a committee that had never met in person. Jack entered to find General Kragvosh already present, his massive frame making the reinforced chair beneath him groan in protest. Accompanying the general was his advisor, Mikleth, a smaller Draxian, whose exoskeleton bore the distinctive green markings of their scientific caste. Behind them stood 4 Draxian honor guards, each carrying ceremonial weapons that Jack knew from briefings were fully functional and regularly used. Ambassador Holloway, rumbled Kragvosh, his translator device barely softening the clicking and hissing of his native language. You have kept us waiting. In Draxian culture, tardiness suggests either fear or disrespect. Jack smiled pleasantly, taking his seat. In human culture, General, arriving exactly on time demonstrates precision and respect for both parties' schedules. I'm pleased to see we're both showcasing our cultural values so early in the discussion. A low rumbling emerged from Kragvosh's thorax, which Jack's cultural training identified as either amusement or indigestion. With Draxians, it was notoriously difficult to tell the difference. Let us not waste time on pleasantries, Kragvosh said, leaning forward. His upper arms rested on the table while his lower set remained near his weapons. The disputed Cygnus mining rights belong to the Draxian Empire. Your colony ships have no claim, and so it began. The dispute centered on the Cygnus star system, specifically 3 resource-rich planetoids that both humans and Draxians had begun mining operations on simultaneously. Unfortunately, neither side had bothered checking with the other first, and both now claimed rightful discovery. General, our records clearly indicate that human survey ships cataloged these resources 18 standard months ago, Jack replied. We've presented this documentation to the Confederation Archive. Documentation can be falsified, Mikleth interjected, his voice higher and faster than his superiors. Draxian honor cannot, Jack resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Approximately 60% of all diplomatic discussions with Vraxians eventually circled back to their unassailable honor, which conveniently aligned with whatever they wanted at the moment. Perhaps we could discuss a joint mining operation, Jack suggested. There are sufficient resources for both our peoples. General Kragvosh's mandibles clicked rapidly, an indication of rising agitation. The Vraxian Empire does not share what is rightfully ours. Your species is young, barely weaned from your planetary cradle. You should show appropriate deference to those who ruled the stars while your ancestors were still discovering how to create fire. A true diplomat would have let this insult slide. Jack, however, had been negotiating for 72 straight hours on minimal sleep, sustained primarily by synthetic caffeine and the increasingly questionable ship rations. With respect, General, Jack said, if age determined authority, perhaps we should defer to the Zentari, who were exploring space when your ancestors were still evolving their second set of arms. The room went deadly silent. The honor guards stiffened. Mickleth's eye stalks retracted slightly in shock. General Kragvosh rose slowly to his full imposing height, his exoskeleton plates flaring to make him appear even larger. The universal translator couldn't quite capture the nuance of the sounds that followed, but the diplomatic AI helpfully displayed a warning. Threat display detected. Jack realized he may have miscalculated slightly. You dare? Kragvosh's voice had dropped an octave. You dare speak to a battle general of the Vraxian Empire with such disrespect? Jack stood as well, though the effect was somewhat diminished by the 2-foot height difference. I speak as Earth's representative, with the full diplomatic authority of my government. Then perhaps, Kragvosh said, his mandibles spreading into what passed for a Vraxian smile, we should settle this dispute in the traditional way of my people. And that was the exact moment Jack knew he was in trouble. I formally challenge you, Human Diplomat, to Kralgoth. Combat for honor and resolution. The general's voice boomed through the chamber. The victor claims the disputed territory, and the respect of the Galactic Confederation. The honor guards clicked their approval. Mickleth looked simultaneously horrified and fascinated. Jack's mind raced through his options. Refusing would be seen as weakness by not just the Vraxians but many of the martial cultures in the Confederation. Accepting was, well, suicidal seemed like an understatement. Ella's voice whispered through his earpiece. Protocol suggests immediate consultation with Earth Central Command. Jack knew what Earth Central would say. Decline politely. Defer to Confederation arbitration. Don't get killed by an alien warlord on a diplomatic mission, for God's sake. But Jack also knew something about Vraxian culture that wasn't in the standard briefings, something he'd learned from a night of drinking with a retired Vraxian military attaché. They respected the unexpected, General Kragvosh, Jack said, straightening to his full height. I accept your challenge. The Vraxian honor guards broke into what sounded like chittering laughter. Mickleth's eye stalks extended so far in surprise they nearly touched the ceiling. But General Kragvosh himself simply stared at Jack with all 4 of his compound eyes. After a long moment, he inclined his massive head. So be it, Human Jack Holloway. We duel at the rising of Nexus Prime's 3rd moon. Prepare yourself, however futile that may be. As the Vraxian delegation departed, Ella's hologram appeared beside Jack. Ambassador, I feel obligated to inform you that Earth Central Command will classify this decision as catastrophically ill-advised. Also, the Confederation Diplomatic Service medical insurance specifically excludes coverage for voluntary combat with species possessing exoskeletons. Jack sank back into his chair. Send a message to Earth. Tell them I found an unconventional approach to the negotiations. And should I prepare your will while I'm at it? Ella asked. Very funny. Get me everything we have on Kralgoth combat traditions. And find Admiral Chen, she owes me a favor from that incident on Tau Ceti. As the door closed behind him, Jack allowed himself a moment of doubt. He just accepted a duel with an alien warlord 3 times his strength, with centuries of combat experience. Diplomatic solution, he muttered to himself. Sure, what could possibly go wrong? Word of the challenge spread through the Confederation faster than a quantum entanglement transmission. Within hours, Jack was bombarded with messages from Earth Central Command, ranging from professionally concerned to colorfully profane. Ambassador, the Secretary General is on her 3rd attempt to contact you. Ella reported as Jack paced his quarters. Her latest message begins with what the absolute and then contains several terms that violate diplomatic communication protocols. Keep screening the calls, Jack said, studying the holographic display of Vraxian physiology floating before him. I need to focus. Focus on what, precisely? Your imminent dismemberment. Jack shot his AI a look. Has anyone ever told you that your bedside manner needs work? I'm programmed for honesty, not comfort. Ella replied. And honestly, Krolgoth has a 0.003% survival rate for non-Vraxians. So you're saying there's a chance? The door chimed, and Admiral Maya Riker stormed in without waiting for permission. She was a compact woman with steel-gray hair cut in military precision, and the kind of face that suggested she'd seen everything the universe had to offer, and had been thoroughly unimpressed. "Holloway, have you completely lost your mind?" she demanded, tossing a datapad onto his desk. "I've got 6 transport ships ready to evacuate you before the Vraxians realize you weren't serious." Jack shook his head. "I was serious, and running would guarantee we lose the Cygnus system, and any respect we've built in the Confederation. Respect won't matter if you're dead, which, let me remind you, is the most likely outcome when a soft-skinned human faces a Vraxian battle general in ritual combat." Admiral Riker crossed her arms. "You're a diplomat, not a warrior." "That's exactly why this might work," Jack said. "No one expects me to accept, much less win. The Vraxians respect the bold and unexpected. There's a fine line between bold and suicidal." Jack gestured to the holographic display. "Look, I've been studying Krolgoth. It's not just about physical combat. It's about demonstrating superiority. Yes, which Vraxians typically demonstrate by tearing their opponents into conveniently sized pieces." A new voice joined the conversation. "Actually, the Admiral is only partially correct." Both humans turned to see Lox Turnal standing in the doorway. The Pelleran diplomat's translucent skin shimmered under the room's lights, hinting at the complex circulatory system beneath. As members of one of the elder races, Pellerans had a reputation for neutrality and extensive knowledge of galactic cultures. "Ambassador Turnal," Jack said with genuine relief. "Please tell me you've got good news." "That depends on your definition of good," Lox replied, gliding into the room with characteristic Pelleran grace. "I've reviewed the complete Krolgoth protocols. Physical combat is merely one component. The challenge must test body, mind, and what Vraxians call dust spirits, roughly translated as adaptability or improvisational skill." Admiral Riker frowned. "So he doesn't have to fight Krogvosh hand-to-hand?" "Oh, there will definitely be combat," Lox clarified, blinking serially with his 3 eyelids. "But as the challenged party, Ambassador Holloway has certain rights in determining the specific forms of contest." Jack's expression brightened. "So I could potentially choose competitions where humans have natural advantages." "Within traditional parameters, yes." Lox produced a small crystal, which projected ancient Vraxian text into the air. "The challenge must include 3 trials. One of strength, one of strategic thinking, and one of—" He paused, searching for the right translation. "Adaptability under pressure." "That still leaves the strength portion," Admiral Riker pointed out. Krogvosh could snap Jack in half without engaging his secondary arms. Perhaps, Lox acknowledged. But the strength trial need not be direct combat. It must simply test physical capability. Jack began to pace, mind racing. Endurance versus raw power. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. Lox's skin rippled in the Pelleran equivalent of a nod. "A valid approach. Additionally, Ambassador, you should know that once issued and accepted, the challenge cannot be withdrawn without catastrophic loss of honor. General Krogvosh has staked his reputation on this duel. So has humanity, apparently," Admiral Riker muttered. A chime from Ella interrupted them. "Ambassador, a Vraxian envoy has delivered the formal challenge parameters. General Krogvosh has specified that the duel will take place on the proving grounds of Nexus Prime in 26 standard hours." Jack took the crystalline document that materialized in the room's replicator. Intricate Vraxian script glowed beneath the surface. "Can you translate this?" he asked Lox. The Pelleran studied it briefly. "It's quite traditional. The general has chosen an ancient format. 3 trials as expected. The first is strength of body, specifically, a contest called Kartoth, essentially an obstacle course designed to test physical limits." Jack nodded. "That's better than direct combat. What else?" "The second is strength of mind. A strategic game called Vex Lar. Think of it as multi-dimensional chess with lethal consequences for strategic errors." "Lethal?" Admiral Riker questioned. "Metaphorically," Lox clarified. "Usually." "And the third?" Jack asked. "Strength of dust spirit. This is interesting. He's chosen Makvora, a test where both participants must improvise with unfamiliar tools to overcome an unknown challenge." Admiral Riker looked skeptical. So we're still doomed, just in 3 different ways instead of 1. Not necessarily, Jack said. A plan forming. Humans have our own strengths. We're adaptable, innovative, and he grinned slightly. Extremely annoying when we want to be. A quality you demonstrate with remarkable consistency, Admiral Riker observed dryly. Jack turned to Lox. I need to formally accept and specify my variations on the trials, correct? Yes. As the challenged party, you may accept the general framework, but propose specific variations within traditional boundaries. Ella, draft a formal acceptance. Jack's eyes gleamed with determination. And get me everything we have on human physiological advantages. Earth strategy games, and he paused, improvisation under pressure. What exactly are you planning? Admiral Riker asked suspiciously. To give General Krogvosh exactly what he asked for. Jack replied. A demonstration of humanity's capabilities that neither he nor the Confederation will ever forget. The Draxian messenger who collected Jack's formal response later that day seemed confused by the human's confident demeanor. Word quickly spread through the diplomatic community that the human ambassador had not only accepted the challenge, but had done so with modifications that made even seasoned xenoanthropologists raise their eyebrows, tentacles, or sensory appendages in surprise. As Jack prepared through the night, studying Draxian combat techniques and cultural nuances, news outlets across the Confederation breathlessly covered the upcoming duel. The general consensus was clear. The human diplomat was either insane, suicidal, or possessed knowledge that no one else in the galaxy had bothered to consider. Only Jack knew which it was, and he wasn't telling. The proving grounds of Nexus Prime were ancient and intimidating. A massive arena complex carved from the planet's unique obsidian-like stone. Originally built by a species that had gone extinct millennia ago, the grounds had hosted countless interspecies competitions, diplomatic resolutions, and occasionally, executions disguised as sporting events. Jack arrived 6 hours early, accompanied by Admiral Riker and Lox Tarnal, who had unexpectedly volunteered as his cultural advisor. A small contingent of human diplomatic security looked profoundly uncomfortable, their hands never far from their ceremonial but very functional weapons. The arena is already at 80% capacity, Ella reported through Jack's earpiece. Confederation media estimates this will be the most watched event since the Zentari succession crisis. Fantastic, Jack muttered. Nothing like potential humiliation with an audience of billions. Trillions, actually, Ella corrected. Several elder species have opened their quantum observation networks for this event. Admiral Riker surveyed the preparation area. Still time to fake a diplomatic emergency and evacuate. And prove every species right about humans being too soft for galactic politics. Jack shook his head. We need this, Admiral. We need to show we belong here. Preferably without getting dismembered, she added. Lox approached, his skin cycling through concerned color patterns. General Kragvosh has arrived with a full honor guard. 27 warriors, all veterans of the Outer Rim campaigns. Is that standard for Kralgoth? Jack asked. No, Lox admitted. It's highly unusual. The general appears to be treating this as a significant cultural event rather than a simple diplomatic resolution. No pressure, Jack murmured. A Confederation official, a towering serpentine draconian, slithered into the preparation chamber. Ambassador Holloway, the ceremonial preparations are complete. You have 1 standard hour before the proceedings begin. After the official departed, Jack turned to his small team. Let's review the plan one more time, Admiral Riker nodded. First trial, Kartoth obstacle course. You've modified it to emphasize endurance over raw strength. Draxians have incredible bursts of power, but poor stamina, Jack explained. Their exoskeletons limit oxygen efficiency and prolonged exertion. Second trial, Lox continued. The Vexlar strategy game. You've selected the variant that allows for continuous rule modification. Humans excel at adapting to changing parameters, Jack said. Draxians are brilliant strategists, but rigid in their thinking. And the final trial, Admiral Riker concluded. The Makvora Improvisation Challenge. You've requested, she checked her notes. Earth cultural artifacts as the mystery tools. The most random assortment I could think of, Jack confirmed with a slight smile. Things no Draxian would recognize, but familiar to any human. Lox's skin rippled in concern. I must warn you, Ambassador, that General Kragvosh is a legendary warrior. He has won 37 Kralgoth duels. How many against humans? Jack asked. None, Lox admitted. Humans have never accepted a Kralgoth challenge before. Then he has no idea what to expect, Jack said. That's our advantage. The door hissed open, revealing Micklith, the general's scientific advisor. The smaller Vraxian's exoskeleton seemed duller than before, indicating stress or exhaustion. The general extends his respect for your courage, Micleth said, without preamble. He wishes to inform you that your remains will be returned to Earth with full military honors. That's thoughtful, Jack replied. Please tell the general I appreciate his consideration, but it won't be necessary. I plan to return to Earth myself, very much intact. Micleth's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. You are either supremely confident or completely delusional. Either way it will make for an interesting spectacle. After the Vraxian departed, Admiral Riker raised an eyebrow. Was antagonizing his advisor part of your strategy? Everything is part of the strategy, Jack said, beginning his final physical preparations. Vraxians respect confidence, even misplaced confidence. It creates doubt. And what about your confidence? Lox asked quietly. Is it genuine? Jack paused, considering the question. Let's just say I've spent my diplomatic career studying species' weaknesses as thoroughly as their strengths. You'd be surprised what you can learn at after-hours diplomatic functions when everyone thinks you're just a harmless human. The preparation chamber's lights dimmed briefly, then pulsed, the 10-minute warning. Jack donned the traditional Challenger's garment, a light synthetic material that had been adapted for human physiology. The blue and silver colors of Earth stood out starkly against the black material. I should warn you, Lox said suddenly. There's been unusual betting activity across the Confederation networks. Several elder species have placed substantial resources on your victory. Jack blinked in surprise. They think I can win. Elder species rarely make poor investments. Lox replied enigmatically. Perhaps they see something others don't. The final warning pulse came. Jack took a deep breath and nodded to his companions. Time to make diplomatic history, he said. One way or another. As they walked toward the arena entrance, Admiral Riker fell in step beside him. Whatever happens in there, Holloway, Earth has your back. That's comforting, Jack said. Especially since Earth initially called this mission, and I quote, an acceptable loss for diplomatic intelligence gathering. Things change, she replied simply. The massive doors to the arena slid open, revealing a cavernous space filled with beings from across the galaxy. The roar was deafening, a cacophony of sounds from thousands of different species. In the center of the arena stood General Kragvosh, his exoskeleton polished to a gleaming finish, all four arms extended in the traditional Vraxian challenge posture. Even from a distance, he was intimidating. Remember, Lox whispered. In Vraxian culture, the duel begins with formal acknowledgement of the stakes. Jack nodded, and walked forward, alone, to meet his opponent under the skeptical eyes of the galaxy. The Confederation moderator, a neutral Quintari, whose 5 faces allowed it to observe in all directions simultaneously, floated to the center of the arena. Today we witness Kralgoth, the Quintari announced, its voice amplified throughout the arena. General Kragvosh of the Vraxian Empire, challenges Ambassador Jack Holloway of Earth. The disputed territory of the Cygnus system hangs in the balance. Let honor guide strength, wisdom temper ambition, and truth emerge from contest. Jack and Kragvosh stood face to chest, the size difference between them drawing murmurs from the crowd. Human, Kragvosh rumbled. Your courage honors your species. It will be recorded in the Vraxian archives, regardless of outcome. General, Jack replied, his voice clear and steady. I look forward to how you'll phrase your concession speech. A ripple of shocked commentary spread through the audience. Even the Quintari moderators' faces registered surprise. Kragvosh's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. Your death will be merciful, out of respect for such magnificent delusion. The Quintari raised its appendages. The Kralgoth begins. First trial, Kuratoth. The test of physical might. As Jack moved toward the starting position of the obstacle course, he caught sight of Admiral Riker and Lox watching intently from the diplomatic box. Beyond them, representatives from hundreds of species leaned forward in anticipation. Ella, Jack subvocalized, through his neural link, initiate physical enhancement protocol. Enhancement activated, she responded. Good luck, Ambassador. The odds remain thoroughly against you. Just the way I like them, Jack replied, stretching as he prepared to face a challenge no human had ever attempted before. The Kartoth obstacle course resembled a nightmare designed by someone with a profound hatred of bipedal life forms. Towering walls, acid pits, gravity-shifting platforms, and what appeared to be mechanical predators dotted the complex three-dimensional maze. The rules are simple, announced the Quintari moderator. Complete the course first or be the last one standing. Traditional Vraxian Kartoth allows all natural biological advantages and minimal defensive measures. Jack's minimal defensive measures consisted of lightweight body armor that covered his vital areas and the standard-issue diplomatic emergency kit strapped to his belt. Compared to Kragvosh's natural armor and formidable physique, he looked like a child preparing for a particularly dangerous playground. Begin. The Quintari's 5 voices echoed simultaneously. Kragvosh launched himself forward with explosive power, covering ground at an alarming rate. Jack, meanwhile, started at a measured pace that drew confused murmurs from the crowd. Human, Kragvosh called back, already scaling the first obstacle with all 4 arms. If you wish to surrender now, I will grant you a less public defeat. Jack didn't waste breath responding. His strategy wasn't complicated. Vraxians were sprinters, not marathoners. Their exoskeletons provided incredible protection and strength but required tremendous energy to move. Sustained exertion was their weakness. The first obstacle was a sheer wall embedded with motion-sensitive plasma emitters. Kragvosh powered straight up it, triggering bursts of energy that he simply absorbed with his armored hide. Jack took a different approach, analyzing the pattern and finding a narrow path that triggered minimal defenses. He moved more slowly but expended far less energy. By the third obstacle, a series of platforms over bubbling chemical pools, Kragvosh had built a substantial lead. The crowd was roaring, most clearly supporting the Vraxian general. But Jack noticed something. The general's movements were becoming less fluid, his breathing apparatus expanding more dramatically with each exertion. Ella. Vital signs. Jack subvocalized. The general's core temperature is rising beyond optimal range, oxygen efficiency dropping. He's burning energy at an unsustainable rate. Jack smiled slightly. Just as we predicted. The turning point came at the gravity maze, a section where directional gravity shifted unpredictably. Kragvosh's greater mass became a disadvantage, as sudden shifts in gravitational pull threw him against barriers with bone-crushing force. His progress slowed dramatically. Jack, lighter and more agile, adapted quickly to the changing conditions. He closed the gap, drawing level with the Vraxian as they exited the maze. Impossible, Kragvosh hissed, mandibles clicking in agitation. Your species lacks the strength for such endurance. We don't have strength, Jack replied, not breaking stride. We have stamina. Humans evolved as persistence hunters, General. We're not the fastest or the strongest, but we can keep going long after other species collapse. The final obstacle was a climbing tower with decreasing oxygen levels. Here, Kragvosh's struggling respiratory system became his greatest liability. The Vraxian's movements grew labored, each grip taking more effort than the last. Jack, whose physical enhancement protocol turned out to be a specialized breathing technique developed for high-altitude climbing on Earth, maintained his steady pace. Near the summit, Kragvosh faltered. One of his secondary arms missed a handhold, nearly sending him plummeting. He recovered, but the cost in energy was evident. Jack reached the top platform 3 seconds before the Vraxian general, triggering the completion signal. The crowd fell into stunned silence. The first trial concludes, declared the Quintari moderator, all 5 faces showing astonishment. Ambassador Holloway of Earth is victorious. Kragvosh stood heaving, his exoskeleton venting excess heat. A clever strategy, human. Unexpected. That's kind of our thing, Jack replied, deliberately controlling his breathing to hide his own exhaustion. As they descended to the arena floor, Jack caught sight of Admiral Riker's expression, a mix of shock and growing hope. Nearby, Lox's skin had shifted to a vibrant pattern that indicated extreme surprise. The crowd's silence had transformed into a buzz of excited commentary. Across the galaxy, analysts were frantically recalculating odds and reassessing human capabilities. The second trial will commence following a brief recovery period, announced the Quintari. Vexlar, the test of strategic mind. As medical attendants approached with recovery supplements, Mickleth hurried to his general's side, chittering anxiously in their native language. Jack didn't need a translator to understand that the scientific advisor was deeply concerned by this unexpected development. Don't look so worried, Admiral, Jack said as Riker approached. 1 down, 2 to go. You nearly gave me a heart attack, she replied. That was cutting it close. Had to make it look good, Jack said with a slight smile. If I'd won too easily, the general might have suspected our strategy for the next trial. Speaking of which, Lox interjected, skin still rippling with excitement. The Vexlar setup is most unusual. The general has selected the ancient form with quantum variance. Jack's smile widened. Perfect. Exactly what I was hoping for. You were hoping for the most complex and lethal version of an already incomprehensible game, Admiral Riker asked incredulously. Trust me, Jack said, accepting a hydration pack from one of the human attendants. The more complex the rules, the better our chances. Across the arena, General Kragvosh watched the human with new intensity. The easy victory he had anticipated was clearly not materializing. For the first time, doubt flickered in his compound eyes. The Vexlar gaming table was being prepared in the center of the arena. A holographic interface surrounded by neural connectors that would link the players directly to the game system. It looked less like entertainment, and more like sophisticated torture equipment. I hope you know what you're doing, Admiral Riker muttered. Because from where I'm standing, you're about to have your mind dissected by a being who's been playing this game for centuries. Jack's expression remained confident, but his eyes betrayed a moment of genuine concern. If I lose this round, have Ella initiate Protocol Omega. The files encrypted in her secondary systems. What's Protocol Omega? My final strategy, Jack replied cryptically. But let's hope we don't need it. The recovery period ended with another pulse of light through the arena. Jack made his way back to the center, where General Kragvosh already waited, looking rejuvenated and determined. The second trial begins, announced the Quintari. May your minds prove as sharp as your ambitions. As neural interfaces descended toward both competitors, Jack wondered briefly if he had miscalculated. The game of Vexlar was notoriously complex, and the quantum variance version allowed for rule changes mid-game, a format that had allegedly driven several grandmasters insane. Then again, no one had ever seen a human play it before, and humans had their own version of changing rules mid-game. They called it cheating. Vexlar wasn't just a game. It was a battle of minds rendered in four-dimensional space. As the neural interfaces connected, Jack and Kragvosh were transported into a shared mental landscape where thought became form and strategy manifested as architecture. To the audience watching external holographic displays, it appeared as a bewildering array of geometric shapes in constant flux. To the competitors, it was a universe of possibilities where each move reverberated through multiple layers of reality. I have mastered this game through centuries of study, Kragvosh's mental voice echoed in the shared space. Your species has barely grasped interstellar travel. Jack's response came not in words but in movement, a bold opening configuration that made several elder species in the audience gasp audibly. The Zavarian Gambit? Kragvosh's surprise was evident. That technique is from the Third Galactic Era. Jack didn't respond, concentrating instead on his strategy. The truth was that he had never played Vexlar before. No human had the neural capacity to fully comprehend its complexities. But he had studied something else. Draxian psychology. While Kragvosh executed masterful traditional strategies, Jack played erratically, making moves that seemed random or even self-defeating. The Draxian initially capitalized on these apparent mistakes, advancing his position steadily. Then came the first rule change, a quantum variant that inverted the value of established positions. Suddenly, Jack's scattered apparently haphazard moves formed a cohesive meta-strategy. Interesting approach, Kragvosh acknowledged, quickly adapting. But predictable. You hope to use the rule changes to compensate for inferior skill. Jack remained silent, focusing on his next series of moves, each appearing chaotic individually, but forming patterns visible only when viewed from particular dimensional angles. Admiral Riker leaned toward Lox in the viewing area. What's happening? The display makes no sense. The ambassador is employing a technique I've never seen. Lox replied, skin pulsing with excitement. He's not playing to win under current rules. He's playing to position himself advantageously for future rule changes. Is that even possible? Predicting random rule changes? Impossible. Lox confirmed. Unless, his skin darkened with sudden understanding. The game progressed through 3 more quantum variants, each radically altering the landscape. Each time Jack's position seemingly weakened, would suddenly strengthen, while Kragvosh was forced to abandon careful strategies. You cannot be anticipating the variants. The general's mental voice had lost its confidence. No species possesses such foresight. Jack finally responded. We don't anticipate, General. We adapt. Humans don't excel at mastering static conditions. We thrive in chaos. Our entire evolutionary history is about changing the game when we can't win by the existing rules. Realization dawned in Kragvosh's mind. You're not trying to win in the traditional sense. Now you're getting it. Jack replied. The final minutes of the game became a frenzy of moves and countermoves. Jack abandoned any pretense of traditional strategy, instead creating patterns that seemed designed to maximize disruption rather than achieve victory. When the final quantum variant activated, one that inverted the entire game state. Jack's scattered pieces suddenly formed a perfect Lorvoth constellation, an ancient winning configuration so rare that legends said it had only been achieved 3 times in galactic history. The neural interface disengaged. Jack and Kragvosh returned to physical awareness, as the arena erupted in chaotic sound. The second trial concludes, the Quantary moderator announced, all 5 faces showing astonishment. Ambassador Holloway achieves victory through unconventional means. Kragvosh stood rigid, mandibles clicking rapidly. You did not play to win. You played to create conditions where winning became inevitable, regardless of the rule changes. I played human style, Jack replied simply. We call it working the system. The general's compound eyes narrowed. Such tactics border on dishonorable. They border on survival, Jack countered. When you're the smallest, weakest species in a room full of predators, you either get clever or get eaten. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Elder species appeared impressed, while martial cultures seemed disturbed by the implications. The Draxian delegation was visibly agitated, conferring urgently among themselves. Admiral Riker approached Jack as he stepped away from the gaming platform. That was either brilliant or insane. How did you manage it? Ella ran simulations on Draxian game strategy for weeks. Jack explained quietly. We discovered they follow predictable patterns even when adapting to changing conditions. I didn't need to master the game. I just needed to understand how Draxians respond to chaos. Lox joined them, his skin cycling through patterns indicating profound intellectual excitement. Remarkable. You essentially created a meta-game where Kragvosh was playing Vexlar, but you were playing against his psychology. 2 trials won, Admiral Riker noted. 1 to go. The Quantary moderator floated to the center of the arena. The final trial will commence after preparation. Magvora. The test of adaptability. Jack watched as arena attendants brought out 2 identical containers, smooth metallic cubes without visible openings. The Magvora requires competitors to solve an unknown challenge using identical unknown tools, explained the Quantary. By Ambassador Holloway's request and General Kragvosh's acceptance, the tools will be Earth artifacts unfamiliar to Draxian culture. Kragvosh approached Jack, looming over the human. You believe human objects give you advantage, but adaptation is about confronting the truly unknown. I have studied thousands of cultures across my lifetime. Studying isn't experiencing, Jack replied. That's the difference between knowledge and wisdom. The general's mandibles clicked once. We shall see, human. 2 victories may satisfy your species' honor. You may withdraw now with dignity intact. Funny, Jack said with a small smile. I was about to offer you the same courtesy. As they took their positions for the final challenge, Admiral Riker whispered to Lox, if he pulls this off, the diplomatic implications will be staggering. Indeed, the Peloran agreed. The galaxy's perception of humanity will be forever altered. The Quantary moderator raised all appendages simultaneously. The final trial begins. Competitors will now receive their challenge parameters. Holographic text appeared before Jack and Kragvosh. Using only the provided Earth artifacts, create a functioning emergency beacon capable of transmitting through quantum interference. You have 30 minutes. The metallic containers open, revealing identical collections of seemingly random human objects, a vintage mechanical wristwatch, a package of chewing gum, a plastic yo-yo, a small music player, a tube of toothpaste, a lighter, 2 ballpoint pens, a roll of duct tape, a pair of sunglasses, and a small bottle of hot sauce. Kragvosh stared at the items in evident confusion. Jack tried, and failed, to suppress a grin. The final trial had begun, and for the first time since accepting the challenge, Jack felt absolutely certain of victory. General Kragvosh stared at the pile of Earth artifacts as if they were an elaborate form of torture. His secondary hands twitched irritably while his primary arms cautiously prodded the objects. The crowd watched in fascinated silence as the fearsome Draxian warlord picked up a yo-yo and examined it with profound suspicion. Jack meanwhile moved with confident familiarity. He immediately emptied the contents of the music player, separating its components with practiced ease. The battery, circuit board and speaker were set aside carefully. Next came the wristwatch, which he disassembled to extract its tiny metal parts and spring mechanism. Your species' devices are primitive, Kragvosh observed, attempting to open the tube of toothpaste without getting paste on his exoskeleton and failing spectacularly. Inefficient and messy. But reliable, Jack countered, already combining the music player's battery with components from the wristwatch. Sometimes the simplest solution is the most dependable. No quantum fluctuations to worry about with mechanical systems. The arena's massive screens displayed close-ups of both competitors' work. The audience watched in fascination as the human diplomat, supposedly trained in words, not technology, methodically constructed what was beginning to resemble an actual communications device. Kragvosh, despite his initial disadvantage, was not to be underestimated. After studying the objects more carefully, he began combining them in increasingly sophisticated ways. Centuries of technological knowledge allowed him to recognize potential uses for even unfamiliar items. The general is adapting quickly, Locke observed from the viewing area. His knowledge of fundamental principles is compensating for his unfamiliarity with the specific items. Admiral Riker nodded tensely. Jack knew this would happen. Draxians are excellent improvisers once they understand the parameters. 20 minutes into the challenge, both competitors had constructed recognizable devices. Kragvosh had created something resembling a transmitter using the music player's components, the sunglasses' metal frames, and the foil from the chewing gum wrappers. It was crude but theoretically functional. Jack's creation looked simpler but more refined. He had combined the music player's circuitry with the watch components and was using the ballpoint pen casings as antenna. The hot sauce remained untouched beside him. 5 minutes remaining, announced the Quinteri moderator. Kragvosh worked frantically, making final adjustments to his device. When he attempted to power it using the lighter's fuel and a makeshift battery, the transmitter sparked promisingly but then fizzled out. Jack, appearing unconcerned by the time limit, calmly finished his assembly. As the final minute approached, he picked up the bottle of hot sauce, opened it, and to everyone's confusion, poured a few drops onto the circuit board. "What is the human doing?" Voices murmured throughout the arena. "Time expires," declared the Quinteri. "Competitors will now test their devices against the quantum interference field." A shimmering barrier of energy appeared between the competitors and a receiver positioned at the far end of the arena. Standard transmissions would be completely blocked by the field. Kragvosh activated his device first. It hummed and vibrated, sending visible pulses toward the barrier. The pulses hit the quantum field and dissipated immediately. No signal reached the receiver. "The Draxian solution fails to penetrate the interference," announced the Quinteri. "Ambassador Holloway will now attempt transmission." Jack calmly activated his device. At first, nothing seemed to happen. No visible energy, no sound, no indication of transmission. The crowd began to murmur in disappointment. Then unexpectedly, the receiver across the arena lit up, indicating successful signal reception. The arena erupted in chaos. Representatives from hundreds of species rose to their feet, appendages or other anatomical equivalents, creating a cacophony of astonished exclamations. "Impossible," Kragvosh thundered. "How did a primitive human device penetrate quantum interference?" Jack smiled. "Hot sauce." "What?" "The hot sauce," Jack explained, holding up the small bottle. "This particular brand contains capsaicin particles that, when heated by electrical current, create a unique wave pattern that rides between quantum states rather than trying to push through them. It's something we discovered by accident during early quantum communications experiments on Earth. We call it the ghost pepper effect." Kragvosh stared at him. "Your species discovered quantum wave modulation through food condiments. We put that stuff on everything." Jack shrugged. "Someone was bound to spill it on a communications array eventually." The Quinteri moderator floated to the center of the arena, all 5 faces displaying what appeared to be stunned disbelief. "The third trial concludes. Ambassador Jack Holloway of Earth achieves victory. The Kralgoth is decided in favor of humanity." A moment of profound silence fell over the arena, followed by an explosion of sound as the implications rippled through the assembled beings. Never in recorded Confederation history had a representative of a junior species defeated a senior warlord in formal Kralgoth. Kragvosh stood motionless, his exoskeleton rigid with shock. Slowly, deliberately, he approached Jack. The human diplomat straightened, uncertain what to expect. The massive Draxian extended his primary right arm, palm open, the traditional gesture of warriors acknowledging each other's valor. "You have fought with honor, human," Kragvosh said, his voice carrying throughout the now silent arena. "Not as I expected, but with courage and intelligence worthy of respect. The Cygnus system is rightfully yours." Jack clasped the Draxian's enormous hand, his own disappearing in the alien's grip. "Thank you, General. Your skills and adaptability were everything your reputation promised." Something resembling amusement flickered in Kragvosh's compound eyes. "You knew you would win before we began." "I suspected I might," Jack admitted. "But victory wasn't my only goal." "Oh?" "I wanted to show the Confederation something about humanity," Jack explained. "We may be younger and physically weaker than most species here, but we're not to be underestimated. We adapt, we improvise, and occasionally we surprise even ourselves." Kragvosh's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "A lesson well taught, Ambassador. The Draxian Empire will remember it." As they walked together from the arena floor, The crowd's reaction transformed from shock to something resembling respect. Elder species who had previously ignored human representatives now watched Jack with newfound interest. Martial cultures who had dismissed humans as soft and weak were reassessing their evaluations in real time. Admiral Riker met them at the exit, struggling to maintain her professional composure despite obvious elation. "Ambassador, Earth Central Command sends their congratulations. Apparently they never doubted you for a moment." "Of course they didn't," Jack said dryly. Lox approached, his skin glowing with an intensity that reflected his excitement. "Ambassador Holloway, this event will be recorded in the Confederation archives. You've altered the galaxy's perception of humanity in ways that might have taken centuries through conventional diplomacy." "About that," Jack said, turning to Kragvosh. "General, I have a proposal regarding the Cygnus system." The Vraxian tilted his massive head. "The territory is yours by right of victory." "Yes, but I'm thinking a joint development initiative might benefit both our species," Jack suggested. "Vraxians have mining expertise we lack, and humans have processing technologies that could enhance efficiency. A collaborative approach would yield more resources than either of us working separately." Kragvosh studied him silently before responding. "You challenge me to Kralgoth, defeat me in front of the assembled Confederation, and then propose partnership. It's another human trait," Jack said with a small smile. "We're contrary like that." After a moment, Kragvosh's mandibles spread in what Jack had learned to recognize as amusement. "I begin to understand why the elder races find your species so intriguing." "Very well, Ambassador. The Vraxian Empire is willing to discuss this unconventional proposal." Within hours, news of the Human Diplomat's victory and the subsequent collaborative agreement spread across Confederation space. Analysis and commentary flooded communication channels, with specialists from all disciplines offering interpretations of what this meant for galactic politics. 1 week later, Jack sat with Admiral Riker on the observation deck of the Earth diplomatic vessel, watching as human and Vraxian ships began preliminary surveys of the Cygnus system. "You know," Riker said, "Earth Central is calling this the greatest diplomatic achievement in human history. There's talk of naming the first settlement after you." Jack winced. "Please tell me they're not considering Holloway's world or something equally ridiculous." "Actually, I believe Jackville is the current frontrunner. I'm requesting immediate reassignment to the most distant inhospitable diplomatic post available." Riker laughed, then grew more serious. "The Confederation Security Council has invited Earth to participate in strategic planning sessions. That's 200 years ahead of projected timeline for human integration. Amazing what challenging an alien warlord to ritual combat can accomplish," Jack observed. "Not exactly covered in diplomatic training." "Speaking of training," Riker said, 17 species have requested human diplomatic advisors, and applications to the diplomatic corps have increased 4,000%. "You've started a trend," Jack groaned. "That wasn't part of the plan. The last thing we need is diplomats deliberately provoking duels across the galaxy." Ella's hologram materialized beside them. "Ambassador, you have an incoming communication from General Kragvosh." The Vraxian's imposing face appeared on the view screen. "Ambassador Holloway, I wish to inform you personally that the Vraxian High Command has created a new diplomatic division specializing in human relations. I will be heading this division." "That's unexpected," Jack replied. "As you demonstrated, unexpected approaches yield valuable results," Kragvosh said. "Additionally, I have been authorized to invite you to the Imperial homeworld for a cultural exchange. Many young warriors wish to learn more about human adaptive techniques." After the communication ended, Riker turned to Jack with raised eyebrows. "Cultural exchange with the Vraxian? That's unprecedented." "The universe is full of surprises," Jack replied, "especially where humans are involved." 3 months later, a new entry appeared in the Confederation archives, accessible to all member species. Humanity, previously classified as a minor emerging species of limited galactic significance. Updated classification, species of special interest. Note: approach with caution. Physical limitations are offset by exceptional adaptive capabilities and unconventional problem-solving methodologies. Traditional assessments of threat-benefit potential may not apply. Recommended protocol: extended observation before engagement. At the bottom of the entry, an addendum had been added in the formal script of the Vraxian Empire. "They put hot sauce on everything. This explains much."